Why do we treat women with Asperger syndrome differently to men? My name's Serena, I'm 23 and I have Asperger syndrome. Asperger syndrome is a social communication disorder, which is broadly defined by traits including obsessive tendencies, repetitive behaviours, an aversion to sudden changes, differences/difficulties in processing information or external stimuli, and non-conventional ways of socialising or presenting oneself. I bet many of you are already thinking, but she can't be autistic, she doesn't have any of the traits. And this leads me on to the topic of this video. Asperger syndrome is massively misunderstood and misdiagnosed in girls and women due to years of research being conducted on boys and men, creating a rigid phenotype on which to judge autistic people of all genders. I want to add that the points discussed can also be consistent with the experiences of autistic non-binary people, which I've discovered through reading and talking to others. In 2015, the National Autistic Society provided support to 3 times as many men as it did women, and for every girl enrolled in one of its specialist schools, there were 5 boy students. There's an inherent gender bias linked to autism. So why are so many women going undetected and consequently untreated? One of the biggest hurdles to support is owed to masking, a mechanism used by many women on the spectrum in order to better fit in. And this not only requires substantial emotional energy, but it also prevents us from being our authentic selves. I'm an expert in masking, having had my Asperger's detected at 17 and diagnosed at 20. I've learned to adopt neurotypical behaviours, including eye contact, sarcasm, small talk, and not saying what I really mean. Males are proven to be less susceptible to masking, displaying their traits more openly through behaviours such as head hitting, hand flapping, spending more time alone, and paying less attention to their physical appearance. Asperger's presents more overtly in males, and this generates the assumption that women and girls are suffering less, or that there's no need for a diagnosis because we present fewer problems in educational or formal environments. I can usually suppress my fidgeting, crying, hyperventilating, and pacing, but when I'm at home and I take my mask off, a delayed sensory overload ensues, with catastrophic effects for both myself and those around me. The reaction to a sensory overload is called a meltdown, and when I'm having one, it resembles a child having a severe tantrum. This is a sight unfamiliar to even my closest of friends, because I've learned to hide it so well. What I'm not so good at hiding are my intense interests, and talking to me about them can be pretty intense. TV and films provide a pretty rigid portrayal of the autistic savant. Almost always male, his special interests encompass science, maths, or engineering. But this doesn't account for girls, who often immerse themselves in more popular hobbies, such as classic literature or animals. Because I spent my childhood reading or playing with my pets, my obsessions were easily overlooked, as people thought that an interest in these topics was entirely normal for a girl of my age. It wasn't until I grew older and my interests intensified that it became much more obvious. Today, I study English literature and own 6 animals, and I wouldn't change it. Speaking of studying leads me on to my final point, which is that autistic women are prone to perfectionism, owed to their need for control, as well as to their black and white thinking. My perfectionism at uni is a constant struggle, as I base my worth on what's written on paper, something that's much easier for me to understand than friendships or relationships. Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old activist nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, has spoken openly about how her black and white thinking owed to her Asperger's is actually what ignited her climate strikes. She explains, "You cannot be a little bit sustainable. Either you're sustainable or you're not sustainable." And this polarised thinking resonates with many autistic women. Despite the difficulties, there is definitely a shift in cultural awareness towards girls and women with Asperger's syndrome. Thunberg was recently criticised for her monotone voice, a recognised characteristic of Asperger's syndrome, and the outpouring of public support definitely reflected a changing paradigm. Last year, the TV soap Hollyoaks introduced an autistic teenager played by autistic actress Talia Grant. Grant claims that when she tells somebody that she has autism, they'll go, "No, you don't," because they have their own idea of it. But she hopes that her role in Hollyoaks will help to change such perception. In 2017, an autistic puppet, Julia, appeared on Sesame Street as part of the show's See Amazing in All Children initiative. And finally, in her book, autistic writer Rudy Simone coined Asperger, an empowering term now used by autistic women and girls everywhere. But you don't need to initiate a climate strike, be on TV, or write a book to make a difference. As an autistic woman, there are so many small changes you can make which are equally valuable. Personally, my journalism and my activism helps me to reach out to women facing similar hardship. I used to think that there was something wrong with me, not realising that although I'll struggle more than the average person, the insights enabled by my Asperger's is something that should be cherished and never hidden. And yours are too, so never ever let the neurotypicals tell you any different.